Hi, I'm Dr. Ellen Storm from U-Turn Health, and today I wanted to talk about the new US administration's food pyramid, which you may well have come across. It was released a few days ago, and it is claiming to reset the direction of the American people in terms of their dietary destiny, to reduce chronic disease and to refocus the nation's diet on real food. So not many people are likely to argue that the basic principle of eating real food is a good one and one that's going to help support health. But this pyramid is going to kill a lot of people. And I'm not going to mince my words here when I talk about this. This pyramid is so badly misinformed that it is going to result in countless untold numbers of unnecessary deaths. Because it focuses on protein and it focuses on fat, because it focuses on animal foods, and they have no apparent concerns about being very open about the fact that they want their dietary guidelines to support their farmers and their ranchers. And that already should alert you to the fact that this is not based purely on science. This is based on money and stakeholder interests. So if you look at the pyramid, you'll see that in the top, so if you look at it, you'll see the top left-hand corner, picture of a chicken, picture of a steak, and a piece of salmon, and then a bit lower down you've got some olive oil, you've got some butter, you've got an avocado in there. Over on the right hand side you've got your low calorie vegetables like broccoli, carrots, greens and things like that. And then a little bit further down you've got a few higher calorie fruits like bananas and grapes, and then right down at the bottom you've got your whole grains, a loaf of bread essentially. So and they say very clearly that they're looking at reducing carbohydrate intake and increasing protein and increasing fat. It is completely the wrong way round. And you know, you could argue that this is a form of murder. These are lies. They're not even well-founded lies. They're just lies. They are completely misrepresenting the nutritional science. And I think there are lots of people talking about this at the moment. So I'm very much not the only person of this opinion. We know that eating a high-fat diet is the reason why we have atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease as our number one cause of premature death in the UK and across the Western world. It happens because fatty deposits get laid down in the arteries when there is too much fat in the bloodstream, more than the body's normal redistributive mechanisms can cope with. And then over a period of time, those become hardened, they become sclerosed over a period of decades. And that's when the arteries become narrowed in a way that's fixed, then they can't kind of expand and contract to allow more or less blood to go through them when you're doing exercise, for example. And that process of sclerosis, that happens because our white blood cells, we have a particular kind of white blood cell called a macrophage, and it's responsible for removing foreign material or protecting us from foreign things that get into our bodies. And it recognizes fat in the wall of the arteries as a foreign substance. So the macrophages come in, they try to eat it. So that's the first thing that they do, is they actually take the fat into their own intracellular space, and then they become something called foam cells, where you can just see lots of little, they look foamy under the microscope. You can see lots of little bits of fat in there. And then if that's not good enough, they can't get rid of it, they do the same thing they do if you have like a piece of glass in your foot, which is too big, they can't eat that. They just try to wall it off, and they wall it off by secreting fibrous tissue around it, so that it becomes kind of like encased in this hard fibrous tissue. And that's the sclerosis. That's what happens. And the more that happens, you have this kind of core of fat inside your atherosclerotic plaque, and then you've got your fibrous stuff around the outside. And then when that, if that fibrous stuff breaks, and the sort of fatty stuff on the inside gets out into the bloodstream, it's a bit like having a cut or something on your skin. It basically it triggers the clotting mechanism. So you get a clot forming, and that clot can block off your artery, and when that happens, you have a heart attack. Or sometimes little bits of the clot can sort of fly off, and they go upstream, and they can go up into your brain, and then that's what we call a thromboembolic stroke. And so if it happens in your coronary arteries, the artery supplying the heart muscle, you have a heart attack, and that heart muscle dies if the blood supply is cut off completely. And if it happens in your brain, and the blood supply is cut off to a part of the brain completely, then you have a stroke, the part of the brain dies, and you lose whatever neurological capacity that part of the brain had. There are also other things that can happen with atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. You can get something called a AAA, or an abdominal aortic aneurysm, where the main blood vessel going down the middle of your body dilates up, and it can burst, it can rupture. That can kill you if it's not caught in time and treated with surgery. And it can also affect the blood supply to your genitals, causing erectile dysfunction, and it can affect the blood supply to your feet, causing what we call peripheral vascular disease. So it can do that, and it can also, we know that if you have too much fat laid down in your bloodstream and then laid down in your skeletal muscle cells, it also can affect your insulin signaling pathways, so that you become insulin resistant. So too much fat is actually the problem in type 2 diabetes, which is a major problem in America already, because Americans are eating far too much fat already. And if you bring your fat consumption right down, your insulin sensitivity improves, your body's ability to handle glucose, which is the main kind of sugar that our bodies like, as a fuel source, then that ability to handle it becomes much, much more efficient. And so we can then, our bodies can run efficiently on sugar, which is what they're supposed to do, but not sugar from, the sugar bowl. That's true. They're right when they say that we shouldn't be eating like just loads of refined sugar without the package of nutrients that comes when we eat the whole fruit. But we definitely should be focusing on the fruit and not on the fat and the protein. I advise that we keep our total fat percentage of calories from total fat down below 10% total. That's not saturated fat, that's all fat. And that fat should always come from whole plant foods. So yes, the avocados, but only in very small amounts. The nuts, the seeds, coconut, durian, very small amounts of those things. And most of our energy should come from the sugar and the carbohydrate in plants, and ideally in raw plant foods, because that is the perfect nutrient package for our bodies. That is what will feed us what we need in order to be healthy, in order to be able to do exercise, be athletic, have a clear mind, have a good mood, and all of the other wonderful things, sleep like a baby, and everything that we all want, really, live pain-free, and reduce our overall levels of inflammation in our body. So it will help us if we've got any kind of inflammatory condition like asthma or arthritis. It's not a magic cure. It can't make you regrow a leg that you've lost, but within reason, this is going to give you your very, very best chance of living a long, healthy, active and pain-free life. So I really, really would strongly advise anyone who is watching this, and you're probably there already if you're already watching me, but anyway, just ignore the American advice, because it's actually murder. It's actually not, it's unforgivable. It's going to kill a lot of people. So then I was going to talk about this is my book, Diseases Have Causes, One Doctor's Journey with an Apple and a Pen. And this is book 1, it's 2 volumes. And on page 169 of book 1, I talk about a paper written in 1995 by Rudell, Parks and Sawyer. And as a vegan, this is not an easy paper for me to read, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. I didn't pay anyone. This was just available on the internet, so I haven't kind of particularly supported them in doing this experiment, but it is useful for us to know. There probably were better and other ways that we could have got this information, but this is what they did in 1995. They fed 44 African green monkeys atherogenic diets enriched with either saturated fatty acids, polyunsaturated fatty acids, or monounsaturated fatty acids for 5 years. And then they killed them, and then they looked at the state of their arteries. And what they found was that they all had developed atherosclerosis, but the ones that had eaten the saturated fatty acid diet had more than the monounsaturated, and the monounsaturated had more than the polyunsaturated. And then they concluded, or at least actually the title of the paper, which was also their conclusion, was compared with dietary monounsaturated and saturated fat, polyunsaturated fat protects African green monkeys from coronary artery atherosclerosis. Okay. I'm actually going to read you the next bit because I think it's just the easiest way. This is where the pedant in me goes crazy. These results do not show that polyunsaturated fatty acids prevent cholesterol oleic accumulation, only that less accumulation occurred in the animals fed polyunsaturated fatty acids. This may seem like nitpicking, but the implications of the inclusion of this one small word in the conclusion are significant. Polyunsaturated fatty acids do not protect African green monkeys from atherosclerosis. It just results in less of it. Saying that polyunsaturated fatty acids PUFA, which is cause, or polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is causes, depends how you say it, whether it's a singular or a plural. But anyway, let's say PUFA causes less coronary atherosclerosis. Saying that PUFA causes less coronary atherosclerosis is a bit like saying low tar cigarettes cause less lung cancer. Low tar cigarettes do not prevent the cases of lung cancer that would have occurred if everybody had been smoking high tar cigarettes. Low tar cigarettes still cause lung cancer, and PUFA still, which is polyunsaturated fatty acids, still causes coronary atherosclerosis, just slightly less of it. If you look at the graphs the authors present showing the intimal area and percentage luminal stenosis for each animal in rank order, this is quite clear. So, the Americans would like to end the war on healthy fats. They would like us to eat lots more of them. I would seriously question whether there are any healthy fats at all. That's not to say that we don't need a very tiny amount of fat in our diet, but most things contain fat. Anything that contains cell membrane, contains fat. And actually, we need the high level of fat in our early years when our brains are growing. Breast milk is 50% fat and it supplies the fat we need to myelinate our brains. But after that process has finished, after weaning, after full-term breastfeeding, say 4 or 5 years, we just don't need it anymore. We have a very tiny turnover, and we get that. We get that pretty much from whole plant foods of all varieties. Even lettuce has some fat in it. And, if we include a few little nuts and seeds and a little bit of avocado here and there, you know what? We're going to be totally fine. We don't need anything else. We don't need any more than that at all. So certainly less than 10% of calories from total fat, and probably closer to 5 is probably what we need, because all those rest of those calories, that's our fuel. And we don't want fat running around our bloodstream. We need a very tiny amount, and our bodies have a mechanism for taking the fat that's in our blood out across the blood vessel walls and into the tissues, but we must not overload that mechanism. If we do, we end up with atherosclerosis, and it's bad news. So when I read this paper about the African green monkeys, it was a real moment for me. I spoke in my last video, which was when I was being interviewed by the lovely Maisie Hogan, about my own experience of developing chest pain after I gained a really large amount of weight, about 5 stone, during my twin pregnancy. And I did that by eating a lot of dairy, some fish, but mostly a lot of dairy, and it was very, very high fat. And after my babies were born, and this was because I did this because I was advised that if I wanted, by a midwife, if I wanted to have normal weight twins, I needed to gain 5 stone in less than 9 months. What I learned from that paper, and it references, other studies that have been done, so it was certainly not the first one, is that we know, scientists know that if you feed African green monkeys cholesterol and or a mixture of cholesterol and other fatty acids, they develop atherosclerosis. And this isn't a matter of luck. This isn't about, sort of crossing your finger, maybe they'll get it, maybe they won't. Like, they all get it. That's what happens. And we all get it too. So they use African green monkeys because they're felt to be quite a good model in terms of the way that they handle fat and fatty acids and develop atherosclerotic lesions, similar to humans. So I understand. I don't support animal studies, but I felt so maybe angry or maybe let down. I'm not sure what the right word is exactly. But, to know that this information is out there, it's known. We know it as a society, as a community, as a scientific community. It's known, healthcare community. Like, this should be known and recognised, and I should not have been given advice like that. Although, to be fair, I did have normal weight babies, which, so. But then, what's normal? What's normal weight? They were huge, actually, relatively. £8.3 and £7.2. It was pretty big babies for twins, and maybe they didn't need to be that big, and I didn't need to have the problems that I've had subsequently as a result of having been given that advice. Because, I was effectively like an African green monkey in a cage, being fed. Well, I was feeding it to myself, but at the time I didn't know any better. I was just doing what I'd been advised to do. And that's what the American people are going to be doing too. They're going to be doing what they have been advised to do. And some of them in institutions, in hospitals, in schools, in prisons, they're going to be fed it, and they aren't going to have any choice. They're just going to be sitting ducks. They are the African green monkeys in a cage being fed food that we know scientifically causes the development of atherosclerosis, and in a relatively short space of time as well, depending how much obviously you're having. And that's criminal. That's actually a criminal thing to do. I still feel very angry about it. I feel very upset about it. It's like, I think when you learn about low-fat, high-raw plant-based nutrition, and you learn how amazing you feel on it and how amazing it's possible to feel, you just feel let down. The misinformation. It's not a game. It really, really destroys people's lives. And yeah, I don't know. I have the word genocide coming into my mind, and maybe that's a bit harsh. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. But in one sense, it does feel like that. It's like, how many thousands or millions of people are going to die as a result of this? I still don't know whether I'm actually going to survive it. I don't think, there was obviously that period of time, but I was also brought up on a very high fat diet. I got free school meals. I remember like Spam fritters and Arctic roll and, pink custard. That's what that's the sort of food I was fed when I was growing up. Fish and chips. Huge carrier bags full of chocolate at Easter. And my arteries are not in a great place. Now, when I stick with my diet, I don't get that pain anymore. And I hope that means that that's that. But I don't know, because as you get older, I still don't really know. I don't think that they're perfect. I don't think they're ever going to be back to how they were when I was a baby, or how great they could be. I probably, I think of myself as a maybe not a very sporty person, although I do exercise, but, probably I'm never going to know what I could have done, what my kind of athletic potential would have been if I had eaten this way from the word go, because probably there's I probably have a degree of restriction, like that stenosis, that process I was talking about has probably taken place to some extent. And you hope that, if you go onto this kind of diet when you're older, as I have, that whatever damage is there, like your body is able to contain it and organize it. We use the word organization in medicine to describe what the white blood cells do. So it's not just like you organize a clot. The clot forms, and then when you like injure yourself and you get a scab, or a clot on the inside, as it gets smaller, that process is what we call organization. And so it's healing is a healing process, but you might be left with a scar. You're never going to be completely the same again, and I think that's probably true on the inside as well. That I hope that the scar tissue is organized enough and sealed over enough that it's not ever going to rear its ugly head as I get older and cause me to have a heart attack or a stroke. But I don't know that, and I'm never going to know that. I don't think, not 100%. You just, we travel hopefully. So that, I guess, is one of the reasons, probably the big main reason why I do what I do, because I've been through a long process of learning. When I started getting this chest pain after my babies were born, it started me off on a learning journey, and I started reading books and scientific papers, and also I sort of was already on that a little bit, but I kind of hadn't I don't know. I had started learning about it when my mum had her heart attack, which was 2004, 2005. So that was like 4 or 5 years before I got pregnant. But I think, at that point I was pretty fit, I was pretty healthy. I didn't think I had anything wrong with me, used to do a lot of cycling and swimming, and I guess it just doesn't really hit home until it really becomes, you have it, you experience it, and it's then like, bam, you have to kind of deal with that. So I think I thought I was a bit invincible, to be honest, when I was younger, in lots of ways. I did things, not just in terms of what I was eating. I was just like, I'm just going to eat whatever, I'm just going to eat what I like. When I first started working and I started earning, I do remember thinking to myself, that's it. I'm just going to eat everything I want. I'm going to eat whatever I like. And what I liked was a really high fat diet and more expensive than spam fritters. But it was, it was still kind of basically dairy and seafood at that point in time. Like, I was pescatarian. Lots of prawns, which are loaded with cholesterol. So, yeah. I think that's all I have to say today. We'll see you again soon.